Hey everybody, it's Mike. Oh, excuse me there. Hey, got little something in my throat. Okay, so welcome back, and I'm going to talk about the Hare Krishna cult. First, I want to say about this wacko guy, the Scientologist guy who's been harassing people. He harasses people online. uh, was arrested and in jail. So, congratulations to everybody who worked on getting that done. Because these cult people, they do feel like they're above the law. Okay, they think that they're above the law. The law doesn't apply to them because, in their words, and it doesn't matter what cult, they feel like they answer to a higher power, a different authority. It's like the Moonies, their authority was that Reverend Sung Young Moon or whatever. Reverend Moon. He's the authority. And whatever he says, or whatever he said in his books, or whatever he said, lecture, whatever, that was real. And sometimes the cult leader, like Moon, or David Koresh, or Jim Jones, or Prabhupada, or L. Ron Hubbard. A lot of times, uh, a lot of times, some of what they say and some of what they preach may not be legal because of the law, right? So they uh, they will break the law, or they feel that they have a higher power. They answer to Moon. So if Moon says, if Reverend Moon tells the Moonies, uh, I say it's okay to have more than one wife. You can have multiple wives, like the Mormons, but it's illegal in the state of California or whatever, right? And he says, don't break the law, but I condone marriage, more than one wife, polygamy, whatever, right? So then the followers go, well, he says it's okay. So they take the chance and then not to get caught. Because he's the one that they're answering to, not the state of California. They answer to Reverend Moon. If Reverend Moon says it's okay to cheat on your taxes, then they'll cheat on their taxes. If the head of the Hare Krishna says 11-year-old girls must be married, then Hare Krishnas will marry their young daughters. They'll marry their young daughters off, even if it's against the law, or in a lot of cases it's not against the law. In the United States, you'd be surprised. Child marriage is allowed in a lot of states with parental consent. So if the cult leader says, well, you can have more than one wife, like the Mormons, the if the cult leader says you can have more than one wife, but don't break the law, then it's like they're sending a signal. They're like, it's okay. L. Ron Hubbard, it's okay to do child auditing, even if that's really, that's having little kids along with adults asking sexual questions and hearing about sexual things is probably that's probably I don't know about the legalities of that, um, but they're going to say, well, they're going to deny it because they answer to a higher power. They answer to L. Ron Hubbard. So Prabhupada, all these cults, they do these things. They don't care. They don't care if they'll intimidate. They'll do whatever they can get away with because they don't feel that it's wrong. It's not. It might be illegal. They might get arrested or get sued, but they don't feel it's wrong because the cult leader says it's okay. So these cults and these people in these cults and these cult leaders, they gotta be held accountable. The planners need to be removed. The people harassing people online and intimidating people, those people need to be accountable. You can't break the law like that. These cults will break the law, no problem. And I'm not just talking about like child abuse. They'll paint their curbs red and make up their own red parking thing. They'll put their own signs in the street that say no parking. They'll block off the Scientology, block off the street. Hare Krishnas will do the same thing. Hare Krishnas will put up blockades and block the street on Watsika, and I don't believe that they have permits to do that. I believe they have their own little things that they put up. And when they want to have a festival, they just stick it up there and block the street. And nobody challenges them. Nobody cares. Although it does inconvenience the neighborhood when they have their stupid festivals. But I would bet that they don't have permits to close Watsika Avenue every time they throw up their little barricades and you can't go. They think they own the street too. And I guarantee you, no one questions whether they have permits to block the street off. I would assume that everyone just assumes that they do. But that's just another example of how these cults, they only follow laws when they're forced to. And if no one's forcing them, then they're not gonna care. The Hare Krishnas would put up a great big sign and do whatever, like illegal signage or whatever. They don't care. They would be like, yeah, we know we can't do that. We know we can't hang something up. That's illegal. It's against the law to do. That's a violation of it, whatever. But they would do it anyway, just like Scientology does. We'll do it anyway until they come and tell us to take it down. They don't voluntarily follow rules. Do whatever they want. They just do whatever they want. So we're going to get into it. I'm going to talk about the poisoning of the founder. So anyway, back to that crazy guy. That guy's in jail, where he belongs. And that's got to be like the Hare Krishnas called it a monkey on a stick. You make an example of someone, and then that deters. They take a monkey when the monkeys are getting onto property and stealing stuff, whatever. So they would kill a monkey and take the monkey, put it on a stick, and put it in front of their place, so the other monkeys could see. Well, there's a dead monkey on a stick. We're not messing with that place because there's a dead monkey on. So that's why the book Monkey on a Stick, the story about the murder and the crimes of the Hare Krishna cult back in the 80s, the book that came out in the 80s that is now a film that you can go watch on Netflix or Amazon or wherever, is called Monkey on a Stick. Because they killed people, the Hare Krishnas killed people to send a message that you don't mess with us. So that's part of their, that they'll do whatever they want. Cults do too. Scientology, the Moonies, Waco, Jonestown, all these cults, they're basically, there's only, it's on a self-destructive path eventually. I mean, every cult, it will eventually end up, it depends on how fast they want to get there, how fast they want to move. Jonestown, he moved fast because he knew the end was coming. So he's like, let's just all die. The Heaven's Gate, same thing. Let's just all go. Waco, same thing. Let's all go. Let's all go. We're all going now. But these other ones, they're like, no, let's give it, let's give it some more time. Let's give it some more time. So, but the Hare Krishnas is the same thing. Hare Krishnas are ready for the end of the world. They're ready for the apocalypse. They think it's coming. They're a lot of them are survivalists. They got this weird survivalist mentality that the world's going to end because the founder said there's going to be nuclear war, there's going to be this, there's going to be Armageddon, and after that all that settles and everything's done, then Hare Krishna will take over at that time. That's when it's going to be perfect for us to. And he said that many times. You can go to this webpage. Oops. You can go to this webpage, and you can just type in. You can see I was searching Negroes, but you can type in whatever you want in that box. Oh, I lost it. I'm sorry. So you could type in, I don't know how to spell Armageddon. So maybe he only used Armageddon once. But if you type in nuclear, it'll come up all the places where he talked about nuclear war or war, nuclear weapons and nuclear war. Under the threat of nuclear warfare, wouldn't Krishna consciousness be more easy to spread? They're talking about this. He goes on and on about nuclear weapons and nuclear war. So you can actually just go and see exactly what this freaky, weirdo, doomsday, death cult guy, what he had to say. And he talks about, if there is a war between Russia and America, would there be a nuclear war? Well, he talks about there's going to be a war. We are living in a nuclear age. We're all power of destruction. Everyone has now got nuclear weapon, bombs, so the scientists gave the solution. Anyway, so I'm not going to get into that. That's not what I'm talking about here. But you can go and you can see all the things that this doomsday guy had to say about nuclear war and Negroes and women like to be raped and all this crazy stuff. I mean, that right there should be enough for any normal person to go, I don't need to hear anymore. This guy wanted 11-year-old girls to get married to grown men. He thought blacks should be slaves. He thought they were simple and could be captured or claimed by him. Like a slave master saying, well, I could use those people. Those black people in Detroit. Let's bring them to me. I can put them to, and when the newspaper reporter asked him about Negroes or whatever, she was asking about race and sex, and he said, well, it's natural in the world that there are masters and servants. That's the natural order of the world. Some people are master and some people are servant. Well, who do you think he wanted the masters to be and who he wanted the servants to be? It's not hard to figure that one out. So all this weird, wacky stuff that he believed and that he taught his disciples to believe, including previous gurus had been killed. He talks about how he in many places he talks about how his guru, there was infighting between his guru before him, and how one guru was poisoned, and other gurus going back had been poisoned and killed, like popes, right? Popes have been killed. So Prabhupada's taught them that in this tradition, this history is that there's murder in this history. Gurus have been murdered. Gurus have been killed, poisoned and killed, including in his recent history. This Ananta Vasudeva, who was appointed the successor guru or whatever, and he had an affair, right? And had a son, right? Sound familiar, right? Because it's all bullshit. So this stuff that's going on in ISKCON today is no different. It's always been. It's bullshit. Bullshit always stinks. If someone said 100 years ago, when people took a crap, it was stinky. Hey, that's no surprise. When I take a crap, it stinks. When everybody takes a crap, it stinks. And I would imagine that 1,000 years ago, when people took a crap, it stinks. So you don't have to tell me that back in the history of this bullshit cult, that it stinks. There's bullshit. You don't have to convince me. You have to tell me twice. Child marriage. Prabhupada is telling his disciples that there were homosexual gurus in his lineage. So this whole cult brainwashing, this cult is so strong that they've been recruiting homosexuals into this cult that teaches that homosexuals are demoniac and were born from the anus of Lord Brahma, and that homosexuality is demoniac and it's evil and no sane man, all these horrible things. And that's the same shit. That's the same shit that this guy preaches. He preaches the same stuff. He preaches this. He preaches in the same stuff about how homosexual gurus and these gurus, now, if you're in a cult that says that homosexuality is evil and demoniac, the idea of having gay gurus in that cult is something that you go, hey, the hypocrisy, that they can't even follow their own rules. It's like, how are you a gay guru and you're sitting up there giving a lecture about how gays are demoniac? I mean, how does that settle with people? But how is that possible? How is that possible? Well, it's been going on for a while. Even in Lord Chaitanya's time. Even in this Lord Chaitanya's time, the same shit was going on. So they just accept this stuff. And they preach against it. They accept the hypocrisy. They accept the murdering and the all of this stuff. It's part of the cult. And then they want to act all surprised when their buddy gets murdered. You're in a cult that has a history of gurus being murdered, of devotees being murdered, of homophobia. suicide, and then you act surprised when your buddy ends up dead, murdered by another devotee on the orders of his guru or a bunch of gurus. You act surprised. You've known about all this the whole time, and yet when it happens to you, it's another fuck around and find out. You've known because this guru's been teaching in the books, and you've been around long enough to know everything. You've heard everything. You've been there forever. You've been there since the beginning. Read all the books, dressed up like a gopi. You dressed up like a gopi because Prabhupada said in the books that the gopis were the highest form, the highest level of devotion. So you and your buddies thought it was smart, a good idea to let's dress up like gopis then. You knew all about the murders, the homophobia, the deviations, the sexual deviations, the not following the made up rules. You knew all about that. You knew about the gurus getting murdered because Prabhupada said it. Prabhupada himself talked about it. And you knew all about it. You knew that in this cult that you were part of, that you were initiated into, had your little fireplace thing going, your little barbecue, where you barbecued the bananas, and you barbecued the rice, and you barbecued the apples and whatever you stuck in the fire, your little vegetarian barbecue, your little hibachi. You knew about that. You did all that. You didn't know what you were getting into? You had to. Prabhupada told you. There've been gurus murdered in this lineage, in this line. The guy before me, he got caught. Had a kid how are you the acharya, the guru, the sampradaya, the whatever? That's like the Dalai Lama. All of a sudden, one day, the Dalai Lama walks out and goes, "Hey, you know what? I had a kid. I had sex with this girl, 9 months ago. No, I tried to keep it hidden, but you know what? She ended up pregnant, and now I got this son. He's like Dalai Lama, little mini. He's a mini me. He's a mini lama. I got a mini lama." People would go, "What the fuck is that? Mini Lama? How's a Dalai Lama? You're friggin' 85 years old or whatever. How are you having a kid? A baby?" I mean, I understand Al Pacino or Robert De Niro, 85, and they have a kid or whatever. I understand that. I don't, but I understand it. But the Dalai Lama? Or the Pope? You imagine the Pope? Pope Francis or whatever the fuck his name is, comes out. "Hey, you know what? I don't know how to tell you all of this, but I have a baby." How do you? But these guys think that they're on the same level as the Pope and the Dalai Lama, and they can go bang some girl and then have a baby. And then you want me to sit there and listen to you talk about how the holy name can absorb all whatever, and the tulsi mala around your neck and the tilak on your head and all of that, and you're chanting 64 rounds, and you want me to believe all that crap when you can't even stop having a baby? And Prabhupada knew. Prabhupada's telling the story, and Prabhupada is still in the same cult because he's not smart enough. He brainwashed Prabhupada knew there was murder in the Krishna cult. Prabhupada knew Lord Chaitanya was dressing up like Gopi. Prabhupada knew this Ananta Vasudev, whatever, had a kid out of wedlock, and then he ends up killing himself, or somebody killed him, or whatever, some shaky, weird stuff. Come on, man. Prabhupada knew all that. Because I wouldn't know it. I heard it from Prabhupada. And you can look, once again, you can go right here. You can go right here and you can look it all up. Oh, look, something about Hitler. Oh, yeah, Hitler was a good guy. Yeah, right there, there's a little thing about Hitler being a good guy. Anyway, see, there's so much bullshit, it's everywhere you look. No matter where you look in his books, you're going to find some bullshit. I wasn't even looking for Hitler. I just typed in nuclear as an example of how you can use this online program, and here this quote about Hitler comes up. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, Verse 19, purport. Prabhupada's already talking about Hitler. Didn't take him long to get to Hitler. He's like, holy name, Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, holy name, Hitler. Fucking disgusting piece of shit. Hitler was the good guy. Hitler was the good guy in World War II. Fucking Holocaust denying. Hitler. I mean, basically that makes. I mean, in my mind, if you're gonna sit there and praise Hitler, and say that Hitler was a good guy, and that Hitler had nuclear weapons and he didn't use them, but the Americans were the bad guys because the Americans used the nuclear weapons, but Hitler had them and didn't use them. Then I call you a fucking Nazi then. I call anybody who is praising Hitler and saying that Hitler did the right thing in World War II. I call you a Nazi. And I got on this Prabhupada's a Nazi thing. Just I wasn't even going there. That's how fucking disgusting this cult is. Once you know what's going on and what's in these books, this shit is everywhere. It's like walking through a friggin' latrine field in India. Everywhere you step, there's crap everywhere. You gotta every step you take. You open up Bhagavad Gita, I think in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's already saying that women are less intelligent. But anyway, I'm off on a whole nother area. I want to get back to Prabhupada being poisoned. So Prabhupada knew that there was poisoning in his cult. He knew that this guy, the guru right before him, in fact, that was like in Prabhupada's life. All that shit about him, this guru and his kid having this baby, and then being murdered or committing suicide or whatever. I mean, I can't believe everything. You know, Prabhupada says he committed suicide or he was murdered. I don't know which one to believe, and but I know the guy did exist, and he was the head of this cult, and he was killed or suicide, whatever happened. Prabhupada knew, and then Prabhupada tells his disciples, and Prabhupada teaches these guys how to be an asshole just like him. Hated everybody. Didn't trust anybody. And these guys were not. It. These guys were not good guys. They were not good people. These people around Prabhupada, like his early disciples that went on to be gurus, Kirtanananda, Bhavananda, Jayatirtha, Hamsaduta, Harikesh. If you read the conversations that he has with them on these morning walks and room conversations, and you read, here's one right here. See, again, here it is, morning walk, World War III, and right here, and he's talking to Rameshwar. He's talking to Rameshwar. So these guys are right there. He's teaching them how to be an asshole, how to be paranoid, an asshole, how to be rude and belligerent, treat your disciples like shit, be racist and sexist, and hate women, and not give a fuck about the kids. He's teaching them this. These people that are speaking out in the Hare Krishnas, they want you to think, the only reason they want you to think that Prabhupada was poisoned is because they want to blame all this bullshit on the people that poisoned him. No. You blame it on Prabhupada. And you blame Prabhupada for him being poisoned. And you blame them poisoning him on Prabhupada. Prabhupada's the source of all of it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Prabhupada was a megalomaniac, doomsday cult leader who created this doomsday cult that hates everybody and everything. It's like a spiritual Nazism. They hate everybody. Everybody's a karmi. And if they could just get rid of all the karmis, they would. They want to they either got to convert karmis or do away with them. And of course, it's not practical for them because you can't. But if they could, there is a conversation where Prabhupada talks about, in the future we will have the nuclear weapons. He says in the future we will have guns, and we will just put the gun to their head and say, "Do you chant Hare Krishna?" And if they say no, then bam. That conversation exists. One day I'll find it, unless they've removed it because it's a pretty harsh one. But that conversation is there. Prabhupada taught them this. He taught them everything. He created the schools. He put the people in charge of the schools. He told them what to teach and how to teach it. Who do you think? Who created the curriculum? Who created the disciplinary actions and all of that? Who? Who created these gurus? Who created Rameshwar? Who gave him the name and elevated him to the level where he was in charge of people's lives? Where they had to ask Rameshwar permission to do stuff. Get married, have a kid, get a job, whatever it is. Who created Rameshwar? Who created Kirtanananda? Who created this guy that thought that he could go into the mountains of West Virginia, create this huge spiritual commune, Krishna commune, and then just molest and murder anybody that got in his way? Where did he get that idea? Where did Hans Sadu get the idea he could just create a whole thing in Berkeley where he was king and he could, running guns and drugs and in charge of people's lives? Where did Bhagavan get the idea that he could live in a castle with golden toilets and golden everything? Where did these guys get the idea that they could fly around the world? World tour. Go on a world tour. On the money that people go out and donate. And then they can just buy a first class ticket to go around the world. While children are eating moldy rice and being beaten in the schools. Where did they get the idea they could do that? Well, that's what Prabhupada was doing. Prabhupada did it. Prabhupada was flying around the world. First class, whatever. Kids were starving in the Gurukula in Dallas, being tortured, beaten, raped. Meanwhile, Prabhupada's flying to London, flying to Munich, flying to South Africa, flying to Tehran, flying to wherever, giving lectures, giving speeches, meeting this person, meeting that person, like he's somebody important. Meanwhile, the kids while he's flying around the world doing all these things, the kids are being beaten, raped, starved, tortured. You think he would have gone on the world tour if people knew what that was happening to his kids? He built those schools. He built the schools, put the people in the schools, and then convinced the parents that they had to send their kids there. And then the kids are tortured, beaten, molested, raped. And they want to blame that on the Rameshwars of the world. The guys had nothing to do with it. Well, they did, but Prabhupada created it. Prabhupada created it and he ran it. He ran it from the time he opened the school until he passed away or was poisoned. Prabhupada was always in charge. He was in charge of everything. And if you read the books, they'll tell you. Prabhupada wanted to know how every stamp was paid for. How much was that stamp? It was 3 rupees, Prabhupada. Well, it only cost 1 rupee to take the rickshaw. So take a rickshaw and save on the stamp. Or the stamp was 1 rupee and the rickshaw was 3 rupees, and he said, put the stamp on it. Prabhupada created everything. He knew exactly where every penny was going, every book, who was doing what. They came and told him. He called them in. So you've been to South Africa. How much money did you make in South Africa? How many books did you sell in South Africa? How many devotees did you make in South Africa? And then he'd make fun of them because he'd have them all there. And he'd say, oh, see, so-and-so, he's doing this, and you're not doing shit. And this guy's doing this, and you're not doing that. Prabhupada was an asshole. He was like Glengarry Glen Ross. And they're all trying to be Prabhupada's little pet. That's what Prabhupada taught. And that's exactly how they treat their own disciples. I saw it with my own eye. I met Tamal Krishna. I had dinner with him, and there was 4 of us at the table. And I was nobody. He didn't know me. He didn't give a shit about me. I was just one of the workers, so I got to sit at the table. How lucky I was. But that man is no spiritual. That man, he passed away. He's gone. But I looked right at. I said, this guy's a piece of shit. This guy's a piece of shit. He don't look like a spiritual guy. He don't act like a spiritual guy. He don't look like he don't look like nothing but a piece of shit. Sitting there bitching, moaning like a little bitch. My disciples don't like me, and my godbrothers don't like me, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And now I gotta go to Mauritius. And I gotta go to Mauritius, and then I gotta shut the fuck up. Can you imagine that? Some guy who thinks he's the savior of the world. He thinks he's better than the Pope. Thinks he's better than the Dalai Lama or whoever, the spiritual leader of whatever. Thinks he's better than them. And he's sitting there at a dinner table bitching about like a fucking little fucking sniveling bitch. Didn't have nothing to say. Didn't have nothing spiritual to say. Didn't have nothing meaningful to say. Nothing philosophical to say. He didn't say nothing that was like, where I was like, wow, this guy is like, I felt more spiritual. This guy sounded like the CEO of friggin' an Amazon warehouse bitching about the layoffs that were coming up, or that he got laid off. And these guys worship, and I'm sitting there, and these guys worship this guy. I had more spiritual and philosophical conversations talking with that guy that I met who lived around the corner from me, who was a Hare Krishna. We'd sit up at night and we'd have these conversations about the Krishna mythology and philosophy and whatever, and we'd have interesting conversations about meaning of life and God and whatever, right? I'm having a dinner with one of the leaders of ISKCON, one of the gurus, one of Prabhupada's main guys, and I can't believe. First of all, I can't even believe I'm on this assignment where I'm the cameraman doing the video for this guy. That in all of ISKCON, I'm the best cameraman. I'm the best cameraman they could find that they had in the LA temple. I was the best cameraman they had at the LA temple, and I'd only been in the thing not that long, a couple years, and here I am filming this guy. Here I am having dinner with this guy. And he was just a fucking schlub like any other fucking schlub I've ever met working in a job as a fucking stupid ass, dumb ass boss. Schlub boss. That's what he was like. Sitting there all like he was all self-important, like, and then whining like a little bitch at the same time about this and that, and Back to Godhead magazine had an article, and my disciples had one. I got a flight to Mauritius. Fucking these guys. Seriously, man, these guys. That's the kind of guys that Prabhupada put in charge. Prabhupada put these guys in charge. Those are the best people that Prabhupada could find. And Prabhupada thought he had the worst friggin' people around him, and he thought that he could turn them. That's what fucking insanity Prabhupada was. Prabhupada thought he could take Kirtanananda, Jayatirtha, Hansaduta, Rameshwar, Harikesh, Bhavananda, and he could turn them into fucking the Pope. Prabhupada thought that he was so powerful, and that Krishna was so whatever, and the chant and all that he could transform these fucking group of degenerate losers, pedophiles, and whatever. He thought he could turn them into friggin' Mother Teresa. And you know what they did? They fucking raped and pillaged every woman, man, woman, and child they could get their hands on. They stole money and took off with underage girls. They took off with their therapist. They ran off with their disciples' wives and get their head chopped off. They ended up in jail for smuggling drugs and guns and alcoholic and molesting little boys and molesting little girls and torturing children in the school. That's what happened. That's what Prabhupada created. Prabhupada created that. It was not taken. They didn't take over. They want you to think, well, if Prabhupada was poisoned, well, then these guys who poisoned him, they're the bad guys. They're no different than Prabhupada. Prabhupada would have poisoned someone too. Prabhupada just didn't need to. He didn't need to poison anybody. But believe me, if Prabhupada needed to poison someone to get what he had, he would have done it. You know, no doubt in my mind. And these guys did. These guys were like, I don't know that they did. I assume that they did. Look at their rap sheet. Look at their rap sheet. And then not only are these guys like criminals, but they're surrounded by people who fucking worship them. Worship them with flowers and candles and incense and bananas and whatever. And say prayers to them and wash their feet. And wash their underwear. And probably drink the water. This guy that I had dinner with, this Tamal Krishna motherfucker, this whiny bitch of a little fuck, he had hundreds of people worshiping him. That worship him today. They still worship. They think he's friggin' God. I was sitting there having dinner with this motherfucker, and there's hundreds of people in the fucking world that think that this guy's fucking God. And I'm sitting there looking at this guy like he's the fucking biggest dickus I've ever seen. Acting like a little bitch. And there are people right now that have his picture in their house, and they're offering bananas and flowers and incense to him. Because they think he's friggin' the greatest fucking thing ever. Why? I have no idea. No fucking clue. Do I think that he killed Prabhupada, poisoned him, or was part of some conspiracy? Probably. Prabhupada was old and sick. He was going to die anyway. Whether they poisoned him or not, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. What matters is who's to blame for all this crap. That's what matters. And what they want is they want people to think that someone else is responsible. So if we can get everyone to believe that Prabhupada was poisoned by these bad guys, then we can just blame everything bad on these bad guys. Because obviously Prabhupada's not bad. Prabhupada couldn't have done anything wrong. Prabhupada was perfect. Well, if Prabhupada was perfect, how did these bad guys get in charge? Prabhupada put them in charge. Prabhupada listed them as gurus. Prabhupada put him in charge of his movement. He put him in charge of running the thing. He put him in charge of his books. He put him in charge of everything. How could Prabhupada not be responsible for them? And if Prabhupada put him in charge and they killed Prabhupada, well then Prabhupada was in charge. Then it must be okay, because otherwise Prabhupada wouldn't have done it, because Prabhupada is perfect. See, their philosophy doesn't make sense. And I can't explain the whole philosophical thing right now, but it doesn't make sense. But here are these guys talking about how it was Prabhupada poison. Who cares?
Podcast. This is episode number 142. Yes, we are still climbing up that ladder to whatever number we're going to reach. So, I'm delighted to bring you episode 142. It's great to be back with you this week. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna project. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, that's the other way you can watch these podcasts. If you haven't already, please like or follow the Hare Krishna project Facebook page. You can be kept updated about what we're doing that way as well. I appreciate the fact that we've got a...
Okay, I just want to say that this is so deceiving, because he wants to position himself, I've said this before, he wants to position himself as this neutral Hare Krishna. Like, I'm a neutral guy and I'm just trying to find out the facts, when in fact he's not. He's 100% in on it, and it's just all propaganda. It's not a project. It's propaganda. It's the Hare Krishna propaganda with Narada Das. So, I'm sorry. I just want to make that clear.
Large global audience now, and we have devotees and non-devotees, whatever that means, tune in from all over the world to listen to, not listen to me hopefully, to listen to our guests. We've had such a huge range of guests over the last 3.5 years. It's been remarkable, and I feel very honoured to have met each and every one of them. And this week's edition is probably going to be another groundbreaking edition. We've got a big topic we're going to be discussing this evening. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest this week. It's Dira Govinda Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Narada Prabhu. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be with you.
No worries. It's great to have you with us. Now, those people watching and or listening who have been following this podcast since the beginning might remember that Dira Govinda Prabhu has been a previous guest on this podcast. He actually appeared on episode 16 back in June 2021. This podcast was very much in its infancy at that time. And it was a wonderful, very important conversation we had that day, I remember, with Saraswati, who's a fantastic child protection campaigner in the United States. And I remember that podcast very well, because that was, I think, the first time I covered a big topic. And I remember feeling quite nervous, but it went very well. And so Dira Govinda has returned 136 episodes later. And actually, he's only the 4th person to appear twice.
I'm honored that you've invited me again. Thank you.
No worries. It's a very small elite group. What are those 4 are? I get them all in a room together. What are their stories? Okay, so Dira Govinda Prabhu, let's start with, so this podcast is quite different. Normally I joke around a bit. I ask the guests where they're from and blah, blah, blah. But we're not going to do that this time necessarily because we've got a really important topic to discuss. Um, and so just so we can kind of set the scene, Dear Govinda Prabhu, can you tell us a little bit about you and your historical involvement with the International Society for Krishna Consciousness?
Okay.
No, we're not going to go there.
Hare Krishna. Okay, well, I first started going to a ISKCON center in State College, outside of Tel Aviv, Israel. I have two children who are both now in their 30s, America. So I served on that board for about 7 years with various other devotees. I'm involved. I'm still involved in research and writing about that. I was more and more discouraged, even I could use heavier words than discouraged, at the thought of bringing people to the institution calling itself ISKCON.
So let me just comment that this freak here, this David Wolf freak, let me go on camera while I say this. So this David Wolf freak here, Krishna freak, he claims to have a PhD in this and a PhD in that, and he's got all these degrees you can see on the back of his on his wall, and he wants to be like I'm a doctor of whatever, or I'm a whatever, but you're still in a cult. So all your degrees and all your learning and everything else still takes a backseat to the fact that you've been brainwashed into this cult. You believe all these culty things about guys with 4 heads and an elephant head, whatever. And the earth is on 4 elephants and it's floating in space and there's elephants that counter all this weird stuff. He believes this stuff. So you want me to believe that all this stuff that you've learned in university and college and master's degree and doctorate degree and all this stuff, that takes a back seat to all this stuff that you believe, because I know how Hare Krishnas are. I know. All that learning that you learned in college is irrelevant because you believe all this weird stuff. That's what you really believe. You only have the degree so that you can put it on your wall and go, hey, you got to listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. That's it. And I know that because that's what Prabhupada says. He wanted his disciples to go, only a few of them, to go get degrees so you could put them on the wall and then people will listen to you. That's all it is. But anyway, this guy was the head of the child protection department or whatever when my daughter was molested at the Hare Krishna temple in Los Angeles. And this guy reached out to me to speak with me, probably because he wanted to feel me out and see if I was going to sue or I was going to take legal action or what was going to happen. He didn't give a shit about my daughter. He didn't give a shit about what really happened. He just wanted to know he just wanted to know where I stood. Like what my feelings on the whole thing, what was going to happen, because he wanted to make sure that I understood that this guy was just living in the property. He wasn't, part of the temple, and all, he was basically like HR, and that's why I say that their child protection office and whatever they do to protect children, they say they do to protect. They're not protecting children. They're protecting the gurus and they're protecting themselves. It's like HR in a company. They're not there for the employee. They're there to protect the company from the employee. So the company doesn't get sued. So the company doesn't get litigation. To make sure the company is not violating anything when they discipline an employee. They're not discriminating. They're not being sexist. They're not being racist. They're not being whatever. That's what human resources is there to protect the company from the employee. It's the same thing. ISKCON has all these boards, right? They have a child protection board, or I think they're even disbanding that because they really don't need it anymore because they're just going to protect. They just protect guru. They don't protect any children. Children are not protected in ISKCON. So this guy was the head of the child protection board when I was when my daughter was harmed.
One sense, I was ISKCON. I had lots of positions. And so more and more as years went into early 2000s and into the mid 2000s, more and more my services, I gave up my services that were directly connected with the organization, and my services were and are just
the original Child Protection Office in ISKCON. We talked about that in our last podcast all those years ago, and I think it's great that a lot of people know that you've done that. You've also appeared on other podcasts too, and people are aware of the important role that you've played, I guess, in the kind of history of ISKCON in terms of taking on that role. We might come back to that a bit, back to that later on, child protection. Because today we're talking about something a little bit different, but there might be a bit of a link, but quite different. Can you tell us about the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation? What is the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation? Why was it established, and what are its aims and objectives?
Okay, yeah, we established, I'll say, Naveen Krishnadas Prabhu, he kind of has been leading the way in many respects towards endeavoring to reveal the truth about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. And he and I, with the support of many others, earlier this year, we established the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation to reveal the truth about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. I'll speak for I have perceived for about 27 years now that in regards to that pastime of Srila Prabhupada, of course, all of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes are transcendental and auspicious. Of course, in regards to the disappearance pastime, there seems to have been, and for me it's stronger than seems to, for me it's clear there's been a lot of, from the institution, concealment, bluff, cover up, denial, it seemed.
Okay. So, Prabhupada passes away in 1977. And then 27 years or 20-something years, 30 years later, or 20 years later, there's some allegations through some shady, no direct evidence, but some shady evidence that he was poisoned. Now, when I was in there, I was of the mindset that I was in the group, and we believed that he was poisoned, and because it fit our narrative, and that's why I understand the narrative. Hey, how you doing? how you doing? I'm glad you're here, Danielle. I know the narrative. The narrative is what's wrong with ISKCON is wrong because of these guys, and the proof of that is that, look, they even killed Prabhupada. So that's basically it. Everything that's wrong with, if they can prove that these guys, if they can convince everybody that these guys, he's not going to prove it, but if you can convince people to believe it, that these guys were the bad guys, then they can blame everything that's wrong with ISKCON on these guys, because that's follows, right? That's, if A, B, if B, C, if these guys are bad and they killed Prabhupada, then everything else that they did is bad. That's their,
like that. And so we established a legal nonprofit to move forward the efforts to reveal what really happened with Prabhupada's disappearance pastime. And also it's, well, maybe interesting in a way, because I established this kind of child protection office with the state of Florida, I served a lot in child protection back in the 90s, early two. I was a children and family counselor in the Department of Foster Care and like that. So, I've done a lot with child protection over the course of my life. At the same time, I was really not the one who advocated for child protection or child abuse, or cover up of child abuse issues connected with ISKCON to be intrinsically part of the justice for Srila Prabhupada.
See, they want to tie in the child abuse and the covering up of child abuse and every other thing that's wrong with ISKCON is connected to this poisoning.
There was others who were kind of collaborating with the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation. Others like leading personalities in the field, in the field of law, in the field of forensics, and in just researching what happened around the disappearance pastime. They came to know, including from communicating with me, the so much child abuse in the history of ISKCON, and maybe even more very worrisome is the systemic institutional cover-up and practically encouragement of the child maltreatment. And they really were saying, we need to do something about this. So that's also an integral.
Yes, because they were found guilty of this child abuse. And there was a $400 million settlement brought by the children against ISKCON and against Prabhupada that ISKCON was, that these guys were responsible for this trauma, and they won $400 million. Now, ISKCON got that knocked down by hiring the known Epstein Island guy who got massages, and he kept his underwear on while he was getting massaged. Dershowitz, he defended ISKCON. How much do you think he charged ISKCON to defend them? He charged a lot. Alan Dershowitz charges a lot. So they would rather pay Alan Dershowitz than go ahead and just pay the kids what they should have been paid. They'd rather give the money to Alan Dershowitz than give it to the. We're found guilty. I mean, just own up. No. See, this is where it comes in. If we can blame them for Prabhupada's being murdered, then we can tie in the child abuse and the cover-up of the child abuse, and then this $400 million lawsuit that they were found guilty of. Well, then we can blame that on these guys, and then all the child abuse that's come up since then, we can blame that on them, and any future child abuse, we can blame that on them. So if we can just get everyone if we can convince everyone that Prabhupada was poisoned, then they think that somehow absolves Prabhupada of all the crap in his books. Like somehow all the crap that's in his books, all the crap in his lectures, all the crap in everything just doesn't matter anymore. The child marriage, the homophobia, the racism, the sexism. If we can just convince everyone that Prabhupada was poisoned, then somehow all that gets transferred over to them too. Because hey, if they poison Prabhupada, well then certainly they'll molest the children and they'll do. Well, yeah, they did all that, but where'd they learn that from? They learned it from Prabhupada because it's in his books. I've shown you where it's in his books. I've shown you how you can go find it in his books. Where he didn't give a shit about the kids. He didn't do anything when they told him that this person had molested the kids and this was going on in the schools. He just said, "Oh, he's got to go away, but he can come back on Sunday, though." Did he do anything for the kids? Oh, tell them to chant more. Did he do anything for the parents? Did he tell the parents that their kids had been molested by this friggin' Satyadana or whatever his name was? Or there's so many of them, I don't even know if I got the right one. I don't even think it was him. I think it was somebody else. Did he say anything about the parents? Did he say take me to the kids? I want to go talk to them. Did he say I want, we need to overhaul the school? I mean, did he do anything? There's no record of it. There's no conversation. It's interesting that they have all these conversations of everything Prabhupada says. But where are the conversations where Prabhupada's talking about, I want a report on how the schools are going. I want a report on how the kids are going. You got conversations where Prabhupada's talking about the money. He's talking about the books, how many books are sold, how much money's coming in, what temple's being built. You don't see any conversations where he's asking about the kids. Hey, how are the kids doing in the schools? Take me to this. You don't hear him ever saying, take me to the school. I want to tour the school. I want to go in and see the kids and talk to the kids. Because the kids probably would have told him, hey, I'm being molested in here. How come when all those kids, you see all those kids around Prabhupada, the little babies around Prabhupada, you don't see any teenagers around Prabhupada? You don't see any 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds around Prabhupada. These kids were so mistreated, and Prabhupada's the reason for their mistreatment. He created the schools, he created the environment, he created the philosophy, he created the books that they're reading. He told them, he created the curriculum. He told them how to discipline them. Everything is blamed on Prabhupada. He put those despicable people in charge that had no business being in charge of children. They weren't even qualified to be babysitters. They weren't qualified to babysit. And yet he had them pretty much just free reign over these kids, answering to nobody. There was no school district. There was no PTA. There was no temple community. The parents pretty much just dropped their kids off and then bounced out to go play Hare Krishna. So they didn't even have to answer to the parents. They didn't answer to anybody. It was Lord of the Flies with adults and kids. That's what it was. It was friggin' Lord of the Flies on steroids.
Part of the mission of the foundation.
Wow. Thank you for that.
And because you've got so many of these grown kids have committed suicide and are speaking out about the child marriage that they were in, and that they were raped behind the stage at the Rath Yatra, or they were at the festival or whatever, was molested, and they're still being molested. So many of these kids grown up, and now they're telling their story. And this friggin' guy has got to live with the fact that this happened, and he was there, and he was part of it. And while he didn't molest any kid, he was there. He was worshiping these guys. He was promoting them as gurus. He was promoting selling books. He was going around. He was part of it. It's a machine, and you're all part of it. I was part of it. When that bus pulled up, and we were all going out to chant and distribute books and do all that, and I was in it, I got in the van, and I went to Venice Beach, or I went to Hollywood Boulevard, and I was part of it. I was part of it. I can't deny it. I can't pretend that didn't happen. These guys were much more than me jumping in a van. This guy's going to seminars, he's doing this, he's the head of this office, he's the head of that office, and he knows it's all a bunch of bullshit. There's no way that the holy name and the deities and the parampara and all of these things are exactly what they say it is, and then all this shit happens. It's not possible. Lord Nrsingadev, he protects children. Well, where the hell was he? He was in the temple room. I know in LA they have a big painting of Lord Nrsingadev hanging in the temple room. And then right across the street, little kids are getting molested by these freaks. So where's Lord Nrsingadev? Mayapur, they got a big Nrsingadev temple. Is he protecting the kids in Mayapur? Hell no. Mayapur is one of the biggest friggin' clusters of pedophiles in the fucking planet. Lord Nrsingadev, there's a temple of Lord Nrsingadev in Vrindavan. It's hundreds of years old. I've been there. It's beautiful. Does he protect children? He's not protecting the children in ISKCON, because ISKCON is the site of some of the most horrendous and horrible child abuse on the planet. In Vrindavan, at Lord Nrsingadev Temple, a 200-year-old Nrsingadev temple right down 2 kilometers down the road. Well, who's protecting who? It sounds like this guy's protecting Prabhupada instead of protecting children. Sounds like this whole thing is about protecting Prabhupada. Justice for Prabhupada. What about justice for those kids? They got awarded $400 million and you motherfuckers cut that down to like a third. Where's the justice for these kids? Where's the justice for the kids that are being abused now? Where's the justice for my daughter? Where's the justice for me having to live through that too? Where's the justice for her and for me? Not that it happened to me, but she's my daughter. And I'm saying I was traumatized by the whole thing. Who do you think was traumatized? She was traumatized, obviously. She was, but I had to live through that whole thing, watching her suffer, and then watching the temple not do anything about it, watching the LAPD not do anything about it, watching the city attorney say, well, we can't prosecute him because we don't have a confession. And then the temple saying, well, there's nothing we can do because there's no charges and no conviction. Meanwhile, they can kick out anybody they want for smoking a cigarette. But this guy molests my daughter, and they can't kick him out. Somehow he can't be kicked out. Why? Because even if a saintly person who's fixed in transcendental service of Krishna does something abominable, you still have to think of them as saintly, or whatever the fuck that verse says. How does anybody ever get convicted? So why does the guy who's smoking a cigarette got to go, but the guy that molests little kids got to go? Why does the guy that's eating hot dogs got to go, but Padma Garba doesn't have to go? How come Sarvabhauma is considered an outcast because he likes to drink? He's alcoholic, right? But Padma Garba can walk around the community like nothing, and he's a pedophile. How is it that everybody made sure that I knew that Sarvabhauma was an alcoholic? Everybody made sure that I knew that Sarva was an alcoholic. He drinks, Prabhu, watch out for him. He drinks, Prabhu, watch out. He drinks a lot. He likes to go drink. He's alcoholic. He comes to the temple drunk sometimes. But nobody told me that Padma Garba was a child molester. Nobody told me Padma Garba was the guy that drove the getaway car with the Robin George case. Nobody told me about that. Nobody told me that Raspadev was the one who was hiding Robin George out. Nobody told me Raspadev was the one that was sued by the Robin George family and the city attorney or whatever for kidnapping that girl and hiding her out. No one told me about those people, but they sure as hell made sure I knew that Sarva was alcoholic. They didn't tell me who the child molesters were, but they told me who Sarva was. So who are they protecting? They weren't protecting Sarva. They didn't give a fuck about Sarva. But Padmagarbha, you have to protect him. He's a good guy. He's not alcoholic.
And I guess for some context as to how this podcast is happening today, it was only, I think, a week ago that a letter went out to hundreds, I assume hundreds of ISKCON leaders, GBC members, temple presidents, and project managers around the world, from yourself and Naveen Krishna Prabhu, who's another long-serving devotee in the movement, informing the recipients, us here at the Hare Krishna Project, we received it too, informing us that new information and evidence has come to light, which indicates that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned, which led to his physical departure from the world. I guess for me, I've been around the movement for about 20 years in this life, and I probably heard about the rumors of Prabhupada's possible poisoning at least 10 years ago or so. But, being super busy with my seva, I just ignored it and got on with what I was doing. And I guess also I didn't really want to think about it. I didn't want.
So what he just said is a symptom of a cult mentality. He heard about the rumors about 10 years ago, but he didn't really want to think about it because he was busy doing other stuff, and he didn't want it to disturb his happy times. I'm happy going to the Hare Krishna temple. I like going to the temple and seeing the flowers and the bells and chanting and the music and then having some prasadam. I don't want to hear about how this Ananta Sesha guru was murdered and his son was murdered and he was murdered. I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about when Prabhupada talks about these gurus that were murdered in line before him and how gurus have been murdered by their followers. I want to hear about that. I just want to go to the temple. I just want to see the deities, and I want to have some flowers. I want to have some prasadam. I want to chant. I don't want to hear about all the children that were molested. But the same thing. Yeah, I first heard about children being molested back about 10, 15 years. I heard these rumors, but you know what? I didn't really look into anything because I didn't want it to bother my seva. I didn't want it to disrupt what I was doing. I was too busy going to the temple. I was too busy doing that. Oh yeah, I heard about that devotee that was molesting little boys. I heard about that back in Vrindavan, but you know what? I was so busy with my seva, and I was going to the temple, and I just was getting some prasadam, and I didn't want it to upset my daughter. I didn't want to bother my daughter. Oh, yeah, I did hear about that devotee that got his head cut off because he was fucking another man's wife, and the guy got mad, and I heard about that. But I was going to the temple and I was doing my seva, and I just wanted to get some prasadam, so I didn't want to bother my duties. I mean, that's a cult? It's like everything. I don't want to hear about it because I just want to. Prabhu, I just want to chant. I just want, you know what? I don't want to be bothered with all that stuff. Well, how is it just stuff? How is children being molested just stuff? How is racism and sexism just stuff? How is women like to be raped just, I don't want to, yeah, I heard that Prabhupada said that. But you know what? I'm not going to investigate that. I just want to do my service. I just want to, I just want to go and I want to have some prasadam and I want to go to. Yeah, I heard that Prabhupada says that homosexuals are demoniac and they're demons and they're insane and no sensible man would be involved in homosexuality because the homosexuals are born from Lord Brahma's ass. And Prabhupada says all this homosexual stuff, all this homophobia is in Prabhupada's books. But you know what? I'm not going to worry about that because, hey, I'm not a homosexual, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to pretend like it's not there, and I'm just going to go on with my service because I want to get some prasadam, and I want to read some books, and I want to see the deities, I want to get some flowers, and that's it. They just go on. I heard about Prabhupada was poisoned. Wouldn't you just say, hey, wait a minute, Prabhupada was poisoned? Who poisoned him? His followers poison? Why would his followers poison him? Asbert is spiritual. Asbert. Evidently, if you come out of Lord Brahma's ass, I would think that's like a boon. I mean, you got to be pretty. I mean, who gets to be born out of Lord Brahma's ass? I mean, can you imagine Lord Brahma just sitting there? He's got 4 heads, right? He's got 4 heads. So the head back here, like Lord Brahma's like, and then the head in the back is like, huh? And he looks down and goes, hey, that's a fat. What are you doing? And he's like, and then the front face is like, ah. And he's like, hey, look, hey, not another. Will you stop? And then the head over here, these two are laughing like, ah, ha, ha. It's crazy. That's what these fuckers think. They believe every word of this stuff. They believe every word of this. And that's why all you gotta do is just catch them, and just say, raise your hand in a lecture and say, well, Prabhupada says in Canto 1, Chapter 17, Verse 30, purport, young girls must be married, age 16 to 24. Is that true? Do you believe that? What are they going to say? Are they going to sit there in front of the whole temple room and say, no, Prabhupada's wrong, 16-year-old girls should not be married to 24-year-old men? Or are they going to say, yes, Prabhupada is correct. Everything Prabhupada says is pure, perfect, and correct. Which one is it? You just raise your hand and say, it's Prabhupada says in this lecture, and you just quote it. Prabhupada says in this lecture that women like to be raped. He says rape means without consent. He says without consent, otherwise there's no rape. So then he says women like to be raped. Do you agree with that? Do women really like to be raped? See what they say. Because at that point, they have to make a decision. They have to make a decision. Do I publicly say in the temple room in front of all these people and the deities and Prabhupada, do I say in front of all these people, Prabhupada is wrong? Or do I say Prabhupada is right? That's how you do it. You put it right to them. You ask them. Or you just say, Prabhupada says that blacks are third-class citizens and they're just drunkards, and that if you build a library, they will only go for drinking. Do you believe that? And then they have to say right there, yes, Prabhupada, if Prabhupada said it, then yes, I believe it. In fact, you can have them on film saying that, asking them that question with your phone, and then just post the answer. Because it's a catch-22. They either answer truthfully that yes, I do believe that Prabhupada is racist and sexist and says that things, or they got to say no, I don't believe that Prabhupada was right when he said that. Because if Prabhupada was wrong on that, then maybe he's wrong on other things. You can ask him, Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto or whatever, that homosexuals are born from the anus of Lord Brahma. Do you believe that? I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, I can't believe that people don't know. Prabhupada says in the conversation in Los Angeles, whatever date it is, that Hitler was a gentleman and that he did not use nuclear weapons. He had nuclear weapons, but he didn't use them because he was a good guy. Do you believe that? I know exactly what they would say. They're going to say yes to everything. They're not going to deny that Prabhupada was right. They're not going to say Prabhupada was wrong. They will not say Prabhupada was wrong. Because if they say Prabhupada was wrong, believe me, everybody, people, they're going to go, what do you mean Prabhupada was wrong? They're going to look at the person asking the question and they're going to go, why are you asking this question? What does that have to do? Well, you said I could ask a question. Seems like a valid question to me. Prabhupada says that women must be married, cannot have independence. At any point in their life, they cannot be independent. Do you agree? And then they're going to turn around and go, well, do you think that it's so? No, I'm asking you. I'm asking the question. They're going to say, well, do you think it's right for a woman to be independent and then have to beg from the government? Or who says she has to beg from the government? What's wrong with a woman having a job, an apartment, pays her own bills, does whatever she wants? What's wrong with that? Makes up her own mind. She decides for herself what she wants to do. What is wrong with that? Well, let me ask you this. No, I don't want you to ask me anything. I want you to answer my question. See, I already know the game that they play. These guys are full of shit. I'm almost ready to end it, but I'm going to watch a little bit more of this jerk off over here talking about Prabhupada being poisoned.
I want to think about what that meant. So I guess for kind of historical context, before we kind of really dig deep and go over the contents of the letter, and a lot of the things we're going to go over in this interview, can you tell us a bit about the history of the rumors, if I can use that word, the history of the rumors of Srila Prabhupada being poisoned?
Okay, so this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. The history of the rumors.
Sure, and just to preface that, you mentioned Naveen Krishna Prabhu, so he's been serving Srila Prabhupada's movement since the early 1970s, so more than 50 years. He served as temple president in Detroit, in Dallas. In the early 90s, the ISKCON GBC asked him to serve as the GBC minister for finances and management, which he did until he did for several years, and then he resigned from the GBC. The main reason being is he was seeing how the ISKCON leadership was dealing or not dealing with integrity or honesty about facts regarding Srila Prabhupada's disappearance past time. So, sure. So, basically, the rumors that Srila Prabhupada was poisoned started in 1997. That's not completely true, because after I became more informed, I realized even since 1977, there were little rumors here and there. I've run into followers of Prabhupada who say, yeah, they left the movement right there, late 77, 78, because they knew what happened. I've run into a few like that. But basically, these rumors were not widespread. But it's not like there were no rumors even back to November 77.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in here real quick because now I was around at that time. So I joined in '92. So the first time I heard about rumors about poison it was probably around 94. 90, because it was before Tamal passed away. I heard the rumors when Tamal was still alive, so it was before Tamal passed away. The rumors what I had heard that made me, and it was something that I remembered. My brain took a picture of it. My brain didn't know what it was, but my brain took a picture. So I was standing in front of the temple, LA temple, on Watsika, and I was standing in front of the book table there. There was a book table there, and Govinda Dutt he's the guy who was running the book table there. And I would talk to him when I would go up there. I would talk to him. He was like somebody I knew. I didn't know a lot of people at that time. So like 93, 94. So I'm talking to him. Something about Prabhupada passing away. There was a book or something about Prabhupada's pastimes. And I said something, and I heard somebody say, Prabhupada wanted something to make him leave his body. And the reason I remember it is because it didn't make sense with what I had already read about the pure devotee and leaving the body and suicide and things like that. So it didn't make sense to me, but I remember it, and I was like, and he said he wanted Tamal to give him something to make him leave his body, and it was distinct, and it was a conversation and I couldn't believe I was hearing that, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. Like there was just people were just talking, but I remember that happening. And so there were rumors. There was definitely rumors before 1997, and I can confirm that. And that's.
But they became widespread. Some recordings came out on the internet in 1990s, and pretty quickly it went viral. I think that's the term. And lots of devotees were listening to it. I'll share a personally narrative, Prabhu. At that time, one of my roles, I was serving as a chairperson of the board of directors of New Raman Reti. And it was already quite a big, thriving, blossoming community. And so the rumors were coming out on the internet. And because basically some recordings with whispers in the back about poison, and okay, that's what was happening. And so, and I also, I did not take it seriously. I assumed there was no credibility to any of that. And I remember after at least one morning program, it was more than one morning program now that I think about it, late 1997, and devotees would come to me because I was serving in a leadership position, they would say, "Dear Govinda, you heard these rumors, internet." And I remember telling them, I said, like, well, I'm assuming there's no validity to these rumors that Prabhupada was given poison. I'm assuming it's not credible, because that was true for me. So just, yes, like I was doubtful and skeptical, maybe even a little cynical that it could possibly be true. So for those who are thinking that can't be true, I empathize with that. That was me when I first heard about it. And then, okay, a little bit later, maybe 2 weeks later, a little later into '97, our family, we we hosted at we were actually living on the New Raman Reddy farm community property, because I had a lot of services connected with ISKCON. We ho- we oh well, we hosted Ambarish Prabhu and his wife Svaha Prabhu. Their two daughters were about the age of our children, and we hosted them at our home. And the children were playing, and our wives were speaking, and then Ambarish and I were in our living.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. I'm gonna stop it there, and I just want to comment. I just want to comment that he said this new Raman Reddy farm community, which is a coincidence, but that ties back to what I was talking about in the very beginning of the show. Um, Hare Krishnas have a lot of farm communities. They buy up land where they can have like a farm community or like a commune. Um, First time they did was in West Virginia, where that freak bought all that land in West Virginia, and he built this new Vrindavan community where that girl was raped. Um, and then there's different ones around the country. There's one in upstate there was one up in upstate New York, Mississippi, North Carolina, Florida, um, all over. And the reason they have these farm communities, not just a temple but a farm. He's talking about a farm, New Raman Reddy farm. There's New Talavan. There's one up in British Columbia. There's one in Pennsylvania, Nita Nagari. These farm communities, and in India too. And the reason for that, like I said, who wants to work on a farm? A farm is a lot of work. Nobody wants to work on a farm. But they have these farm communities because they think the world's going to end. They think the cities are going to blow up, and they're going to have this farm community where they can grow their food and they can have their temple, and they don't have to raise cattle, but they can just grow food and be Hare Krishna, and that they will be the ones that will survive the nuclear holocaust when at the end of the World War, when all the nuclear stuff is over and everything's wiped out. They will have their farm community. They're going to have all these little farms, these little Hare Krishna farms, and all the Hare Krishnas can go, all the survivors can go to the nearest Hare Krishna farm or wherever Hare Krishna farm they want to go to, and they can live there. And they'll have, they'll be growing food, and they'll have their whatever, their little community, and their temple, and their farm, their food, whatever. And that's what they think. That's the philosophy behind that. That's why when you see these Krishnas and they're talking, if you ever see them and they're talking, farm community. I'm from New Talavan farm community, Nita Nagari farm community, the commune in Florida, the commune in Badger, the commune in Three Rivers, the commune in. It's always out. Farmland. There's in Utah. They got one out in farm community in Utah, farm community up in Washington, outside of Seattle or outside of wherever. They have these farm communities, and that's because they think the world's going to end, and they want to have their farm. They want to have their farm ready, willing, and able to take over. And that's the point of the farm communities. And that was, I thought it was interesting that he brought up the fact that he was at this ramen ready farm. I was on this farm. But it's just more evidence of their just weird, freaky views of the world and what it's going to be like and what it should be like with child marriage and farm. Can you imagine their idea of the perfect world is where the world is ended, that it's apocalypse over, nuclear war is over. Just the Hare Krishnas have been saved because Krishna is going to save the Hare Krishnas. So just the Hare Krishnas are saved. They got their farms, and everybody is on the Hare Krishna farm working a farm. Getting up early in the morning, going to the temple, and then going to the farm. You got to milk the cows because you got to have milk. You got to churn the milk to make butter. You got to grow the crops. You got to grow crops just to feed the cows and the bulls. That's work. It's work just feeding the animal. And you got to have pigs because pigs got to eat all the shit or eat. They clean up all the mess. Keep the water things run. I mean, they're insane if they think that after everything's destroyed, they're gonna just be all happy with their little farm community. But that's what they think. Like, if Krishna is gonna save them in a nuclear war, why wouldn't they just save them in the city and give them everything they need available? Oh yeah, because Krishna doesn't care. All those little kids that were praying to Krishna for Lord Nrsingadev to come and save them from the horrible abuse that was being inflicted on them by their own gurus. And Nrsingadev didn't show up. Nrsingadev didn't show up to save. And those little kids were chanting and chanting and chanting and praying to Lord Nrsingadev to come get these demons, and Lord Nrsingadev never showed up. He never came and saved them. It was actually the courts and law enforcement that came and saved those kids. It was the karmis that came and saved those kids. It was the karmi law enforcement. It was the karmi courts and judicial system. It was the karmis, the karmi lawyers that filed lawsuits. It was the karmi judges, and the karmi district attorneys, and all of that. It was the karmis that did that. Because the Hare Krishnas didn't give a fuck. Hare Krishnas didn't give a fuck about their kids. It was the karmis. The karmis cared more about their kids than they did, because the karmis had to go in and save these kids. And take them to court and get them a judgment so that they could get some kind of justice. Because they weren't getting it from the Hare Krishnas. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? The karmis that they talk shit about. That they don't like. We're so evil with our meat eating and our homosexuality and our gambling and smoking cigarettes and smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol and going to Las Vegas and having a hamburger. We're so evil. We're just so evil. And yet look what they did to their own kids. They did shit to their own kids that karmis are disgusted like that. In fact, you fucking Hare Krishnas that did that to your kids, you end up in jail and you'll see what fucking karmis will do to you. You fucking Hare Krishnas that abused those kids and raped those little boys and little girls and tortured them and mentally abused them and verbally abused them and physically abused them and sexually abused them when they were 6 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old. You guys belong in jail. And you know what would happen to you in jail? Exactly what you deserve. Exactly what you deserve, you fucking disgusting freaks. With your child marriage and your women like to be raped. Blacks are third class and belong in the jungles and drunkards. And if you build a library, blacks will only go for drinking. The fuck? That's your spiritual leader. It's fucking disgusting. I'm gonna end it right there. Fucking disgusted myself with this bullshit. I got so into it today, I went right into the show. I didn't do the opening or anything. Nothing. Just got right into it. And it did almost 2 hours talking about this crap. I know Hare Krishnas watch, and I know they come in, they watch, they dip in, they look, see what I'm talking about, and they bounce out. They never say anything. Because there's nothing to say. They don't ever, not once, never do they say anything. The only one time they said something and I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I haven't heard shit. But I know they watch. I know they watch. They need to hear. They need to hear the truth. But like Scientologists, they run and hide from the truth. Like a Scientologist, if you try to talk to them and ask them real questions and say, what about the child abuse? What about the domestic abuse? What about people like Narayan that beats his wife, beat every wife he could while devotees stood around laughing and Prabhupada stood around laughing? What about that? What about devotees? Like, you think Narayan was the only one who's beaten his wife, beat every friggin' wife he ever had, and had all these kids with all these different wives? That's not that Prabhupada didn't preach. Prabhupada didn't preach that. You don't see that in Prabhupada's books. And yet here he is, one of Prabhupada's early disciples, right there with him, all that, and he couldn't even follow what Prabhupada was teaching him. Narayan was just a dirty old man his whole entire life, and he just pretended to be a devotee, pretended to be around Prabhupada, beating his wives, just using them, having kids. I think he's got like more kids than Elon Musk. How does a guy do that? How does a guy get to be with Prabhupada and all his books and all the chanting and all the service and all the things that Narayan did for Prabhupada, all the things he built for him? He built his chair and he built his cupboard and he built his this and he built the museum and and all that. How do you do all that stuff? But you can't follow any of the friggin' rules. And you know you're not following the rules. You know you're not following the rules. Or are you following the rules? Or was he doing what Prabhupada wanted him to do? Domestic violence, that's okay. So I guess we can't say anything about Narayan beating his wives because Prabhupada didn't care. Prabhupada didn't care. Having all those kids, well, I guess if he put them in the Gurukula, it's okay. Prabhupada didn't care about that either, because Prabhupada didn't give a fuck about kids. Having kids and just abandoning them in the Gurukula. When you know what's going on in the Gurukula, and you're just having more kids, and you're just bringing more kids into the movement that you know is abusing children. The fuck is that? Abusing your wife while she's sitting there writing all these things glorifying you on the internet. Now I look at those like they were hostage letters. My honorable husband, my glorious husband, who would never hurt a dime, would never hurt a fly. My glorious husband, who's so worshipable and who has done so much for her. She's getting smacked around every night, and she's writing shit like that. I look at that now like that was friggin' hostage friggin' emails. Blink twice if you need to rescue from Narayan. These people are nuts. These people are nuts. I don't want nothing to do with them. I don't want to be anywhere around them. I see them, I go ahead the other way. These people are like dangerous. They kill their own. They have no problem poisoning their own founder. They have no problem murdering their own people. They have no problem beating and torturing and abusing their own kids. They have no problem with that. It's in their books. It's in their books. This is a fucking disgusting piece of shit cult, masquerading as some ancient Indian culture, masquerading as a spiritual tradition thousands of years old. Anyway, that's it for today. I'm gonna just thanks for watching. Thanks for like, share, and subscribe. Get my videos out there so more people can know this is a dangerous pedophile cult. It protects pedophiles. It protects criminals. They don't report anybody to anything. You go into a Hare Krishna community or Hare Krishna restaurant, you don't know who's in there. You don't know who's working in that restaurant. You don't know those people. They could be pedophiles. They could be half of these people belong on a friggin' list, sex offender list. But they don't report their crimes. They don't process. They don't do anything. So nobody knows who they are. They're just free to wander the world. They could be in Barcelona one day. They could be in India the next day. They could be in Los Angeles the next day. They could be in New York the next day. Be in Tel Aviv the next day. So be careful out there with this friggin' cult. It's not safe to be around them, even in their restaurant, anywhere near them. Especially if you have kids. Your kids are not safe around these people at all. All you gotta do is just Google it and you'll see. So thanks a lot. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day, great night, great morning, great afternoon. Wherever you are, have some great luck. And here, watch my commercial here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
I was in the bar for a drink or two. I met a girl named Mary Lou. Her blue jeans were so tight and cut so low. Those jeans were stretched across her butt. On a belt she wore a rabbit's foot, and I couldn't help but see her camel toe. Mary Lou had a camel toe.
Means that และกลับเข้าสู่ My Mental Time btk1radio.com Whatever, I'll do what I want.
You're listening to Mike's Madhouse on btk1radio.com.
Worried about God. I'm afraid of what he might do if anything should happen to me.
God, but he's a robot. Without Jesus, could he do?
There's no limit to what he could do. He could destroy the earth. If anything should happen to me, you must go to God. You must say these words.
Dumalang, video Zuzi and ready to Mike's Madhouse, more bkk1radio.com.
And now it's time for the Dumb American on Mike's Madhouse.
Back to dope tunes and stupid talk with White Boy Mike on Mike's Madhouse.
Bye.